Hello, Bainbridge Island community. Thank you for tuning into our Veterans Day episode of Spartan News. As you probably know, Veterans Day was last Thursday, November 11th. In today's episode, we will be talking about how to honor veterans, as well as interviewing some people with experience in the military. But first, here's some history on Veterans Day. World War I, known at the time as the Great War, officially ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919 in the Palace of Versailles, outside the town of Versailles, France. However, fighting ceased 7 months earlier when a temporary cessation of hostilities between the Allied nations and Germany went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. For that reason, November 11, 1918 is generally regarded as the end of the war to end all wars. After the end of World War I, President Wilson declared November 11th as Armistice Day in 1919. It was a day to honor the heroic actions of those who died in service and those who didn't. In 1938, an act was passed to make Armistice Day, Veterans Day, an official holiday.
Good morning, I'm Mr. Shields. I'm a math teacher here at Bainbridge High School.
So what branch of the military were you in?
I was in the United States Army.
How did you decide what branch to go into?
It was largely decided by where I went to college. So I went to the United States Military Academy, which people refer to sometimes as West Point, and everyone who goes there is commissioned into the Army.
Okay. How long did you serve?
I served for 25 years.
And do you have any stories?
Sure, I'd like to maybe share one story. So when I graduated from college, I was commissioned as an infantry officer, and shortly thereafter, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, which is where the infantry school is for the Army, and that's where I did my initial infantry training. And my first duty assignment was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I was assigned as an infantry platoon leader. So as an infantry platoon leader, which is pretty typical for the Army, I was in charge of about 40 soldiers who range in age from about 18 to about 35. And as a new second lieutenant, right out of college, that can be a little bit scary at times. But I was well trained for it, and I had a lot of great non-commissioned officers who are professional soldiers who helped me out. I had been at Fort Bragg for about 8 months, so this would have been in 1990, so I'm dating myself a little bit here, when we were at a rifle range, which is a typical day in the Army, and my company commander called us over to his Humvee and told us that Iraq had invaded Kuwait. And I have to be perfectly honest with you, at the time, I wasn't really sure where Kuwait was in the world. And I was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division, which is a rapid deployment unit, so we have to be prepared to go places quickly. And so we were told that we might deploy if the president decided to send troops to Saudi Arabia to defend Saudi Arabia. And so we immediately went back to the garrison area, to our barracks, and started preparing our bags. I was allowed to go home for about an hour or two to prepare any personal affairs that I needed. And then within about 24 hours, we were loaded on Air Force aircraft and flown to Saudi Arabia. And when we first got there, we were the only Americans there, or very few Americans there. And our job was to defend Saudi Arabia from the Iraqi forces that were in Kuwait. And it was definitely a little scary because we were just light infantry. All we had was rifles and maybe a few grenade launchers and some shoulder-fired anti-tank weapons. And we prepared defensive positions in the desert. And it was extremely hot in August in Saudi Arabia, 120 degrees or more. And so for about a month, we were really one of very few American forces on the ground in Saudi Arabia. But then shortly thereafter, American forces started to flow in, and we really changed from being a defensive force to preparing for some sort of offensive operations against Iraq. And so I was there. We trained for a while, and I spent a lot of time in the desert with my soldiers, really got to know them really well, did a lot of really great training with them. And then once if you know the history of Desert Storm, Desert Shield, once the ground war started, which was about January of 1991, as a light infantryman, we followed behind the heavy forces that attacked into Iraq. So we actually followed behind the 24th Infantry Division, and there was also a French division there, and we followed behind the French division. And our job was primarily to handle the prisoners of war, and because at that point, the Iraqi forces had pretty much collapsed. So my platoon processed a lot of prisoners of war, and we also, what we called it, decommissioning Iraqi equipment, which really meant we were just blowing it up, which was kind of fun. And so then once we did that for a few months, and then once the war was over, we came back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I continued on in my Army service. So that was my first assignment. That was my first experience in the Army. It was a pretty amazing experience. It was not necessarily fun all the time, but I was really proud of it. And then I continued to serve for a number of other years and did lots of other things.
Thank you. How do you feel we should honor veterans on Veterans Day?
I think a simple thank you is nice. Veterans Day is meant to be a celebration, different from Memorial Day. And so I think a simple thank you is nice. I think veterans appreciate that. I know for me personally, it's kind of a day to just reflect a little bit on my service. And so I think just a simple thank you is very nice.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.